On Monday, January 30th, 2023, a fifth civil lawsuit was filed in court against shock rocker Marilyn Manson, as well as Interscope Music and Nothing Records, dating back to 1995, with allegations of sexual assault and grooming against Manson and promotion of deviant behavior and ignorance on behalf of Interscope and Nothing Records. The accuser in this new lawsuit asked the court for permission to go by the pseudonym Jane Doe, as she wants her identity to be anonymous. However, by comparing some of the details in her lawsuit to previous online statements, it is easy to figure out who this new Jane Doe is. So let's compare some of the allegations in this new lawsuit to what this accuser previously said to The Sun, a tabloid that offers financial incentives for their stories. Sections 44 through 46 of the lawsuit detail allegations of SA by the hands of Marilyn Manson. It reads as follows. On an early evening on September 15, 1995, a few days after plaintiff's 16th birthday, plaintiff attended an all-ages concert where defendant Warner performed with his band. Defendant Interscope and defendant Nothing Records marketed and promoted the show. After the show, a group of about 20 young fans gathered outside the venue in front of defendant Warner's tour bus in hopes to see defendant Warner and his band. Fans waited in line for autographs. Plaintiff and 3 other underage female fans waited to meet defendant Warner and other band members. Defendant Warner was looking at the girls and began talking to them. Defendant Warner took plaintiff and one of the other younger girls onto the tour bus. Defendant Warner questioned the minors, including plaintiff, specifically asking what each of their ages were, what grades in school they were in, and where their parents were at the time. Defendant Warner then asked both children for their home addresses and phone numbers, jotting them down, suggesting that he would send them both promotional material from his fan club. While on the tour bus, defendant Warner performed various acts of criminal sexual conduct upon plaintiff, who was a virgin at the time, including but not limited to forced copulation and vaginal penetration. One of the band members watched defendant Warner sexually assault plaintiff. Plaintiff was in pain, scared, upset, humiliated, and confused. After he was done, defendant Warner laughed at her. It further goes on to say that then defendant Warner told her to get the F off of my bus, and he threatened that if she told anyone, he would kill her and her family. In comparison, this is what the new Jane Doe had to say to The Sun in February of 2021 about her first encounter with Marilyn Manson. Quote, the 41-year-old brunette said she was a huge fan of Manson and first met him after his performance on September 15, 1995 at Deep Ellum Live in Dallas, Texas, during his Smells Like Children tour. A 16-year-old virgin at the time, she claimed she waited to meet the star at his tour bus with a group of younger friends and was stunned when he acted inappropriately, sitting them on his lap, groping them, and French kissing her. I was kind of pulling away, and he actually put his hand behind my head and pulled me back in and began to French kiss me for a few seconds, she said. I just got off the bus and walked off. I didn't know what to think. I was like, is this good? Is this bad? What's happening? I'm scared. As you heard, these two accounts are very different. In one, she says Manson French kissed her, and then she got off the bus in a confusion. The other, she claims that they went as far as to have intercourse. The new Jane Doe also spoke of verbal abuse that she allegedly endured. She told The Sun that Manson would be verbally abusive to her in front of his entourage or his group of friends. In her lawsuit, Jane Doe said this mainly took place in front of young female fans. Quote, he was never violent towards me, but I believe the women who have come forward, and I feel I've dodged a bullet in a lot of ways, unquote, Jane Doe told The Sun. However, her lawsuit detailed a different story. Quote, defendant Warner had been sexually violent with plaintiff in the past, unquote, the lawsuit states. Sexual violence is still violence, and in February of 2021, this accuser stated that violence never occurred. This is clearly another contradiction. In February of 2021, Jane Doe told The Sun that she was with Marilyn Manson for a 3-month period beginning of March of 1999 while Marilyn Manson was on tour. However, her new lawsuit contradicts this by stating that she was with Marilyn Manson for a 4-week period when she was approximately 19 years old in 1999. Another thing to mention is that in her online allegations from 2021, she states that Marilyn Manson pursued her until he was tired of her by the time she was age 18. However, her lawsuit states that a lot of this took place when she was 19 years old, so there is an age discrepancy here. Jane Doe also accuses Interscope and Nothing Records of facilitating this alleged behavior by Marilyn Manson. She gives examples of promotional material from this time period in her lawsuit, as well as examples from Manson's albums Portrait of an American Family and Smells Like Children as clues to Manson's supposed deviant behavior that the record companies turned a blind eye to. Lastly, it's important to remember that during this time in question, Marilyn Manson was in a serious relationship with famous actress Rose McGowan. Where Jane Doe states she spent so much time with Manson during this time period while he was touring, Rose McGowan's book Brave paints a different picture. A few times in this lawsuit, Rose is mentioned by inference but not by name. The following video excerpts are from Colonel Kurtz's YouTube channel, where she reads from Rose's book. Jane Doe makes it seem like Manson was alone most of the time while touring in 1999, but Rose had something different to say.
Online shop. We basically hid out from the world at home, totally domestic, when we weren't on the road having mad escapades. When I ran off with the Manson circus, I didn't really work for about 3.5 years. She didn't really work. She was with him almost the whole time, 3.5 years. It was a blast, and we were madly in love, and anybody who thinks differently is wrong. It was a pretty legendary relationship, not just in the media. It was a pretty legendary relationship behind the scenes, too. We had a whole lot of amazing. Says, so she talks about how she remembers standing on the side of the stage, looking out over 350,000 people, and hearing Manson sing a song that he had written for her, Coma White. I don't know this song. Like I said, I've not really looked into the music, but she talks about it a bit and how it meant something to her that he had sung that for her. She says touring was both fun and banal, and it was especially hard encountering groupies, subjugating themselves and letting themselves be used by guys in the band and the crew, just for the sake of being closer to someone famous. So there's a paragraph in here where she actually does complain about the behavior of some of the guys that she saw on tour, some of the guys in the band, some of the guys in the crew, and the fact that she felt that they were taking advantage of these women on some level, or that these women felt like that they were getting something out of this when they really weren't, right? When they were really just being used. She doesn't talk about Manson at all in that way. So this is a woman who has no problem calling it out. She just doesn't say that about Manson. In fact, what she says with Manson is that they spent their time at the back of the bus watching The Big Lebowski on loop, and they didn't even associate with others very much. She said at times it was like them, sort of in their bubble.
Marilyn Manson's main attorney addressed this new lawsuit in a statement by saying, quote, Brian Warner does not know this individual and has no recollection of ever having met her 28 years ago. He certainly was never intimate with her. She has been shopping her fabricated tale to tabloids and on podcasts for more than 2 years. But even the most minimal amount of scrutiny reveals the obvious discrepancies in her ever-shifting stories, as well as her extensive collusion with other false accusers, unquote. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for future updates and developments.